Hey folks, thanks for checking out Reigniting Liberty. I'm Deneen Borelli. And joining me today is Connecticut State Senator for the 36th District, Ryan Fazio. Ryan is running for a second term. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Deneen. Great to be with you.
Great, it's my pleasure. So before we get into your campaign, Ryan, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background and your life experience.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Greenwich in this state senate district, went to the public schools in Greenwich, went off to study economics at Northwestern University, and then I chose to return to Connecticut to work and build a life. I worked in commodities trading, specifically renewable energy, for most of my career. Now I work for a sort of a venture capital fund that invests in small businesses and helps them grow. I started to get involved in local government a few years ago. I sat on the RTM, joined the Energy Efficiency Committee in Greenwich, and then I finally decided to run for the state senate in 2020 because while I loved our community and thought so highly of our community, I was deeply frustrated with how the state was being run, with our state leadership over many years. And I thought the best way to protect our community and create change in the state government was to try to do it myself.
And how was your first term?
Well, it's been very interesting. I think the first thing that strikes you when you're elected and when you get inaugurated is the great amount of responsibility and the great honor it is to represent a district like ours or any district. So that's the first thing that struck me. And there wasn't a day I walked through the halls of the state capitol, which is quite stunning and beautiful, where that didn't really strike me deeply, that I'm so honored to be there. But unfortunately, I think the state government is run exactly as poorly as you see from the outside. The legislative process is, shall we say, not well considered. They're throwing dozens of bills at you every day that most people are not reading and can't read because they come at you so fast. And while the titles of the bill sound, cuddly and nice, like rainbows and butterflies, the substance of them, those that you actually do read, are actually quite bad. And they've led to exactly the situation across Connecticut that we see today. A stagnant economy with a huge deal of inflation, increasing crime, especially increasing violent crime, greater centralization and infringement on our personal liberties, and less local control, less discretion for our own communities. So it's not a good situation up there, and we need a change.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the titles of the bills, rainbows and butterflies. They do sound warm and fuzzy. If you can just delve into that, like give us an example. And because in my view, if people are not really following what's going on in their state and their communities, they are being duped to a certain extent.
Yeah, well, a good example is 2 years ago, they passed something called the Police Accountability Act. And, it sounds like you're just holding police accountable, but it actually just takes away across the board important tools from police in order to keep our communities safe. So on one hand, it has like 40 some sections in it. It's actually quite wide ranging. And it has things that I actually support, like all police uses of force, all incidents of police use of force get reported. So even if a police has to rough up some suspect because he's not being cooperative, but it's not that significant, that gets reported. So there's transparency. I support something like that. That sounds like accountability to me. But banning across the board important proactive policing practices like consent searches, which obviously do not violate the civil liberties of citizens because they are only searching their person or their property, specifically their car, if the suspect is giving consent. Those were banned, but those were important tactics for taking dangerous drugs and illegal guns off the street over many years. And as a consequence of these, I think, very left-wing policies that don't have anything to do with accountability, we've seen an enormous rise in crime across Connecticut the past couple of years, over an 80% increase in homicides, in our state's largest cities from 2019 to 2021, a doubling of car thefts in towns like Greenwich over a couple of years. This is a disaster, and it had nothing to do with accountability. It was actually a guise for advancing left-wing ideology and imposing it on Connecticut.
So you mentioned crime is a really big issue, and that is something that is a problem across the country. What are some of the other issues of concern for the state of Connecticut?
Well, the economy first and foremost. We learned this morning that the national economy has gone into recession, but the state economy of Connecticut never even recovered from the last recession. It never recovered from the recession before that. So we've had negative growth in Connecticut since 2008. That's just not acceptable. And the only explanation is because of the failure of government policy and an overbearing state government and bureaucracy in Connecticut. We have the second highest taxes in the country, according to the Tax Foundation. We have the highest regulatory burden in the country, according to the Cato Institute. And worse yet, the people currently in power continue to add to those burdens. They've passed over 30 workforce regulations in the past 5 years. They've passed about $1 billion of tax increases in the last 4 years. That is highly unusual, and it is a doubling down of the exact mistakes of the past, which have hampered the middle class in this state, which have sent so many small businesses and families packing to different states. We have one of the most educated workforces in the country in Connecticut. We have all the assets necessary to succeed fantastically, economically and otherwise, but the state government is just making it impossible for middle-class families and small businesses to succeed because of their state policies.
So give us a few examples of some of the consequences if the Democrats happen to have a supermajority in Connecticut.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, because down here in the southwestern part of the state, the ultimate makeup of the state legislature will be determined. If we can win 4 state legislative seats in a large town like Greenwich, then there'll be closer to 50-50 balance in the state legislature. Maybe even Democrats will have a small majority. But if they win all 4 state legislative seats in a place like Greenwich, then they will without a doubt have a supermajority in the Senate and in the State House, which will embolden the leadership to pass whatever they want, the exact left-wing agenda that they are already on the record supporting. That includes a statewide property tax, which is the bill that was proposed by the Senate president in Connecticut, the highest ranking legislator in Connecticut, or the second highest. They will eliminate school resource officers, which are a vital tool for keeping our kids safe in schools, especially high schools. We have 2 of them in Greenwich High School. They have them in the Stamford High Schools. They have them in the New Canaan High School. That is the Senate Judiciary Chairman's bill, and a doubling of the 830G requirement, which we know well in Greenwich, but basically it takes away more and more of our local control of our towns and cities. That is the House Majority Leader's bill. So these aren't backbench legislators who are supporting these left-wing programs. These are the very leadership, the most powerful people in the state legislature, who, if in 2022 they are able to retain large majorities in both houses in a year that Republicans are expected to do better nationwide, then they will be emboldened, then they will be given permission to advance as left-wing an agenda as they can. So that means statewide property tax, no more school resource officers, no more local control. These aren't things I'm making up. These are actual proposals that have been formally submitted by the leadership of the Democratic Party in the state legislature, and that's exactly what's at stake in November 8th's elections.
And what is some of the feedback you're getting from folks when you're knocking on doors and going to different events?
Well, it's been very positive. I'm an old-fashioned type of person. I like to knock on people's doors. That's exactly what the other 3 Republican candidates in our area like to do too. And I just ask them, what are their concerns? And to a T, the number one thing I hear is the enormously high tax burden and the inflation that we're all experiencing. But that's especially bad in Connecticut. But I go to doors like I did yesterday with talk to Democrats, and they say, listen, I'm behind you because I think you're a common sense person. I think the solutions, I pay close attention. I think the solutions you're advancing for more local control, for lower taxes and better economic policy are exactly what this state needs. And I'm willing to cross party lines in order to vote for you for that reason. I mean, that's exactly what we need to hear across this town, across this district, across the state in order to win as Republicans, because I think that the average voter, the average middle of the road person sees exactly the fruits of 12 years of one party rule in this state. They don't appreciate it. They know it's failed, and they understand that we need to change. So we're bringing people together for that change on this campaign and others.
And before we wrap up, is there anything that we did not touch on that you would like to highlight?
Well, I just want to reemphasize, I think that this community in southwestern Connecticut that you and I live in, and this state is just such a fantastic place. And we have been so battered by the state leadership into thinking that the best we can do is slow growth or no growth and rising crime and more state control rather than local control and personal liberty. That is just not the case. We should dream big. This is a great state. It could be the fastest growing place, the most desirable place in the most desirable country in the world, if only we change direction and we change leadership. I really think that the sky is the limit for this state, and that 2022 is the best opportunity we've had in decades in order to change it and put it on a positive course. So I'm so excited for this year, and I'm so excited to work hard in the trail to engage with voters and try to make that change happen.
And how can people help, and what is your social media platform and your website?
My Twitter is Ryan Fazio. My Instagram is Ryan Fazio CT. My Facebook is Ryan Fazio. And my website is ryanfazio.com, and you can sign up there to make phone calls, to go door to door, to help in any way. This is a grassroots campaign. We have dozens of just regular people who have become close friends because we've worked together on a couple campaigns now. So I ask for your support in any way.
Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today, and good luck to you.
Thanks, Deneen.
Folks, thanks for checking out Reigniting Liberty, and remember, everyone has a role to play. What are you doing for liberty? Until next time.